There are a lot of ideas that we just assume that we know a lot about because we hear about them all the time, but actually we don't. For instance, if you were to corner me at a music concert and ask, "What's classic music?" I'll be like, "The old music or the ones having the old musicians involved." In short, nobody will have the exact answer. Just because we are familiar to the concept does not mean that we actually understand it. Ecology is the kind of same way. Even though it's a common everyday concept, an ecosystem is a word that we hear a lot. I think most of us will be a little stumped if somebody actually asked what an ecosystem is, or how it works, or why they're important. My presentation includes this set of content: definition, introduction, energy flow, biogeochemical cycles involved in the ecosystem, and importance. Basically, ecosystem ecology is the integrated study of living and non-living components of ecosystem and their interactions within an ecosystem framework. It is a subdiscipline of ecology that focuses on exchange of energy and materials between organisms, that is their biotic factor, and their environment, that is their abiotic factors. The materials that are commonly studied in ecosystem ecology includes water, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and other elements that our organisms use as nutrients. Getting towards the introduction, ecosystem can be small, such as the tide pools found near the rocky shores of many oceans, or large, such as the Amazon rainforest in Brazil. I have attached these two images where you can see a tidal pool ecosystem in marine and an Amazon rainforest ecosystem in Brazil. We have three broad categories of ecosystem based on the general environment. It is freshwater ecosystem, ocean water ecosystem, and terrestrial ecosystem. Organisms in an ecosystem organize themselves into a trophic structure, with each organism situating itself in a certain place in a food chain or a food web. I have attached two pictures here. First picture is of a food chain in which we have green algae as a primary producer, mollusks as primary consumer, slimy sculpin as secondary consumer, and last, tertiary consumer, that is a salmon. In a food web, we can see phytoplankton and vegetation as primary producer. Herbivores include zooplankton, invertebrates, herbivorous ducks, geese, and swans. Primary consumers, small planktivorous fish and bivalves. And then we have secondary consumers, that is birds, sea ducks, tundra swans, and tertiary consumers, that is eagles. Now we have a term, trophic dynamics. What is trophic dynamics? Trophic dynamics refers to the process of energy and nutrient transfer between organisms. Material cycling in ecosystem is usually coupled with energy exchange. For most ecosystems, the primary source of energy is the sun. Autotrophs like plants, bacteria, or protists capture small packets of chemical energy which is useful for other organisms, such as primary producers, primary consumers, secondary consumers, tertiary consumers, quaternary consumers, and lastly detritivores. What are detritivores? Detritivores include earthworms, sea stars, fiddler crabs, dung beetles, and fungi. Energy flow in an ecosystem. Energy flow in an ecosystem begins with the capture of solar radiations by photosynthetic process in primary producers. This energy moves through the reticulated network of interactions, forming the complex dependency pattern known as the food web. I have also attached a picture here where you can see all the energy exchange happening. Now we have ecosystem measurement. An ecosystem can be measured by its biomass and its total productivity. So, what's biomass? Biomass is the total weight of living things in an ecosystem, and total productivity is how much energy is produced or used, and how quickly it grows back, and how good the ecosystem retains the energy. Biomass productivity is one of the most apparent and economically important ecosystem function. Biomass accumulation begins with at cellular level via photosynthesis. Photosynthesis requires water and consequently global patterns of annual biomass production are correlated with annual precipitation amount of productivity are also dependent on the overall capture of plants to capture sunlight, which is directly correlated with plant leaf area and nitrogen content. Now here you can see an equation that is NPP equals GPP minus R producer. What is this? Let's go towards it. We have NPP. NPP is net primary productivity. It is the primary measure of biomass accumulation within an ecosystem. Net primary productivity can be calculated by a simple formula where the total amount of productivity is adjusted for total productivity losses through maintenance of biological processes, and GPP is the gross primary productivity. R producer is the reproducer is photosynthate, that is carbon, which is lost via cellular respiration. Now here we have a figure which shows us the data of seasonal trends associated with periods of high and low NPP and an overall annual increase of atmospheric carbon dioxide. Now we have biogeochemical cycles. Nutrients move through the ecosystem in biogeochemical cycles. A biogeochemical cycle is a circuit or a pathway by which a chemical element moves through the biotic and abiotic factors of an ecosystem. It is inclusive of the biotic factors or living organisms, rocks, air, water, and chemicals. The elements that are moving through the biotic or abiotic may be recycled or they may be accumulated in a place called as sink or reservoir where they are held for a long period of time. The amount of time that a chemical is held in one place is called residence. Now we have types of system. We have two types of systems, closed system and open system. A closed system occurs when the chemicals of or elements used in an ecosystem are recycled instead of being lost. And an open system occurs when the sun provides earth with energy in the form of light and heat, which is usually used and then lost in the form of heat as it travels through the various trophic levels on earth. The principal elements of life are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. Now let us look at some of the cycles. We have hydrologic cycle, also known as the water cycle, a very significant molecule on the planet Earth is water. It cycles through the system or ecosystem for the reason that life is so dependent on water as a medium of chemical reactions within cells. While it generally is the case that we discuss the water cycle in terms of various stages of water. At least some water molecules are taken up by the plants and split apart, that is, photolyzed into atoms of hydrogen and oxygen. The latter, that is, the oxygen, is released into the atmosphere as molecular oxygen. Thus, by virtue of photosynthesizing organisms, that is photoautotrophs, the water cycle is an important part of both the oxygen and the hydrogen cycles. Note that hydrogen ends up as part of an organic molecule and therefore a participant in the carbon cycle. The majority of water in the water cycle is found within the oceans and the polar ice caps, although water is present in the bodies of organisms, in freshwater lakes and rivers, frozen in the glaciers, and in the ground as groundwater. Water moves or less freely between these storage reservoirs by evaporation, by precipitation, and by runoff from the land. Now we have carbon cycle. As we all know that carbon is required for the building of all organic compounds. Carbon in the form of carbon dioxide is obtained from the atmosphere and transformed into a usable organic form by organisms. The reservoir for the carbon cycle are the atmosphere, where carbon dioxide exists as a free gas. Fossil organic deposits, that is oil and coal, and durable organic material like cellulose. Mineral carbonates such as limestone are a significant geological sink for carbon. During the process of carbon fixation, carbon dioxide is taken up from the atmospheric reservoir or from biocarbonates dissolved in water by plants, photosynthetic bacteria, and algae and is fixed into organic substances. Animals obtain their requirement for carbon as carbon based molecules by eating plants or other animals. For the biological links, the carbon cycle comes full cycle when carbon is released by either plants or animals as they respire or after life as they decompose. Organisms respire carbon dioxide as a waste product from the breakdown of organic molecules as their cells derive energy from oxidizing molecules containing fixed carbon. The burning of organic materials such as wood or fuels also result in the release of carbon dioxide from organic carbon. Carbon dioxide is a trace gas and has huge effects on Earth's heat balance by absorbing infrared radiations during the growing season or summer. There is a decrease in atmospheric carbon dioxide because increased sunlight and temperature helps plants increase their carbon dioxide uptake and growth. In the winter time, more carbon dioxide enters the atmosphere than can be removed by the plants. This happens because plant respirations and the deaths of plants happen faster than photosynthesis. Here is the image showing the carbon cycle. Let's look at the nitrogen cycle. Is one of the biochemical products which exist within the environment. It is required for the manufacturing of all amino acids and nucleic acids. However, the average organism cannot use atmospheric nitrogen for these tasks, and as a result, it is dependent on the nitrogen cycle as a source of its usable nitrogen. The nitrogen cycle begins with the nitrogen stored in the atmosphere as N2 or nitrogen stored in the soil as ammonium, that is NH4, ammonia NH3, nitrite NO2 negative, or nitrate, that is NO3 negative. Nitrogen is assimilated into living organisms through three stages: nitrogen fixation, nitrification, and plant metabolism. Nitrogen fixation is a process which occurs Nitrogen fixation is a process which occurs uh, I have lost the context. Let me find the lines. So we have the nitrogen fixation. Nitrogen fixation is a process which occurs in prokaryotes in which nitrogen is converted into NH4 positive, that is ammonium. Atmospheric nitrogen can also undergo nitrogen fixation by lightning and UV radiations and become NO3, that is nitrate. Following nitrogen fixation, nitrification occurs. During nitrification, ammonia is converted into nitrite and nitrite is then converted into nitrates. Nitrification occurs in various bacteria. In the final stage, plant absorbs this ammonia and nitrate and incorporates it into their metabolic pathways. Once the nitrogen has entered the plant metabolic pathway, it may be transferred to animals. When the plant is eaten by them, nitrogen is released back into the cycle when denitrifying bacteria convert NO3, that is nitrate, into N2, that is nitrogen, in the process of denitrification. When detritivores Detritivores bacteria convert organic compounds back into ammonia in the process of ammonification, or when animals excrete ammonia, urea, or uric acid. A lot of environmental problems are caused by the disruption of the nitrogen cycle by human activity. Some of the problems caused range from the production of tropospheric, that is lower atmospheric smog, to the stratospheric ozone and contamination of groundwater. An example of one of the problems caused in the formation of greenhouse gas like carbon dioxide and water vapor. Greenhouse gas traps heat near the earth's surface and destroys the stratospheric ozone. Once that occurs, nitrous oxide is the Earth's atmosphere is broken down by UV lights, that is ultraviolet radiations, into nitrogen dioxide and nitric oxide. These two products can reduce the ozone. Nitrogen oxides can be changed back into nitrates and nitrite compounds and recycled back into the Earth's surface. Now let us look at the importance of ecosystem ecology. Ecosystem ecology plays an important role in understanding and adapting to the most pressing current environmental problems. Restoration, ecology, and ecosystem management are closely associated with ecosystem ecology. Restoring highly degraded resources depends on the integration of functional mechanisms of ecosystems. Without these functions intact, economic value of ecosystem is greatly reduced and potentially dangerous conditions may develop in the field. For example, areas within the mountainous western highlands of Guatemala are more susceptible to catastrophic landslides and crippling seasonal water shortages due to loss of forest resources. In contrast, cities such as Totonicapán that have preserved forests through strong social institutions have great local economic stability and overall greater human well being. Ecosystem ecology provides the basic science needed to avoid degradation and to restore ecosystem processes that provide for basic human needs. That was all about my topic. These are some of the references through which I have gathered all the data on ecosystem ecology. Thank you.